In this Process Simulator Professional training video, we'll take a look at arrays. We will define our process times in a spreadsheet and import this information into an array. Process Simulator will then use the array data as needed for process times within the model. So I've got this example model where we have a truck coming in and it orders boxes to either dock A or dock B. When those boxes arrive, we can look in our logic here, and if we look at freeform logic, we are assigning each of those boxes a job type. You may recall in our user distribution video that those job types were being pulled from a user distribution where they're getting job type 1, 2, or 3. What we're going to do is use that job type data, and we've had somebody go out and do a time study on what our different process times are based on those job types. So we took that information and we found that if it was type 1, type 2, or type 3, here's how long the process times are at each of our activities within our model. So we can see that dock A and dock B, at either dock, regardless of which dock, we have varying process times based on the type of boxes being delivered. When it gets down here to our downstream processes, we have 3 different process times for those. And then at one of these activities, whether it's A1, A2, or A3, we have different process times that we've recorded in this spreadsheet. So what we're going to do is we're going to define an array that reads this data in at the beginning of the simulation run and then uses this data for process times. So I'll just save this. To define arrays in Process Simulator Professional, you come into Advanced Elements, and we have a tab here called Arrays. Within that tab, we have various columns for the data we need for definition. I will just call this one Y process times, and I need to define how many dimensions it has. These dimensions will be based on that spreadsheet. That spreadsheet was using a 3x3 array, so 3 rows by 3 columns. And the types of data that we can store, that we can import into our arrays, are either integer data, real data, or expression data. The expression data would be something besides integers and reals. In our case, we were using probability distributions in our spreadsheet. To read that in as an expression and have, say, the normal distribution or the triangular distribution evaluated each time the model encounters that expression, we will define this to be an expression array. And then for my import file, I can browse to the location of that file. And I just have it in a folder here. I'll call Process Times XLS. And it was on sheet 1. And if I look at the spreadsheet, I can see that the data actually starts at cell B2 and it extends to cell D4. So I can define B2 to D4 as my data containing region. So I have the name of my array, its dimensions, the fact that it's an expression array because I'm referencing probability distributions within the array. It's pointing to the Excel file. I'm not going to export any data afterwards because I won't be manipulating the data as it runs. I'm just going to read it in and evaluate it. And we have the option to disable it. We can disable either the import or the export or both. If we're running different experiments, we may want to do that. And then we have the option to clear the data between replications or keep the data. If I left this at clear, then it would actually, each replication, it would refer to the Excel spreadsheet and it would repopulate my data. When it's not changing between replications, it's just a redundant action there. So that's how we import the array information into the model. The next step would actually use those values within the model. The way we use our array values within logic is the same way we use variable values within logic. We just have a slightly different syntax that we need to use to refer to which row and which column the data is coming from. I'm going to start by doing this with the logic builder so that we can see how that syntax builds up. In our case, we're going to use this data for the wait statement. So if we want to wait a certain amount of time based on the array value. So I can say wait Y process times, and it allows me to say which row and which column. For this first one at the docks, that's going to be row 1, so I can use the value of 1. And for the column, we're going to reference the attribute value. So my attribute for job type. So it'll look at row 1, which is the dock timing, and then it'll pull its data from the appropriate column based on whether its attribute value is a 1, 2, or 3 will point to the column we need. So the syntax will say wait y process times 1, comma, a job type. And then we have the time unit at the end there. So I can say OK, and that's what that syntax will look like. Once we're comfortable with our syntax and referencing things this way, we could also do this with the freeform logic. So if I go to doc B and do the same statement, I could say wait y process times, and then use, it's a square bracket, and again this is row 1, and it's a job type, close bracket, min. Now you'll notice you don't need to worry about your capitalization when you're using freeform logic. So I can use all caps for this wait, all caps for the word min, or all lowercase, whatever my preference is. So that's the logic for the doc. I can use this copy button here, and when I come to my downstream process, it's similar logic. It's the same array, but this time we're going to use the data that's in row 2, which represents our downstream process data. So row 2, and then pick column 1, 2, or 3 based on my attribute, and make that my process time. Now this process time will run in addition to any process time that's already in my general window here, and any process time that I may have defined using the logic builder. So I'm going to change the general time to 0 and say use this process time from the array instead. Now I will come down here to activity 1, 2, and 3, and we'll do the same thing. Copy this data, come to activity 1, and I can just paste it in there, and this time it'll be row 3, and I can copy and I can paste, and this is row 3 as well because I had all of these on the same row in my spreadsheet, and I can paste there too. So that's all we do. It's going to look at the appropriate cell for my spreadsheet, and it will use the time value that's in that cell for the processing time. Let me go ahead and change these values to 0 in the general time field. And we can go ahead and run this model. So that's a first look at using arrays within Process Simulator Professional. Join us for a full training class where we have hands-on exercises and help you do even more advanced things with arrays. And stay tuned for future Process Simulator Professional videos. Happy modeling.